Have you ever become obsessed with your own heartbeat and wondered whether it was about to stop beating? Or maybe some other fixation that something is wrong or that a symptom that you're having is bound to be something serious? Maybe you feel that symptom and immediately start to panic. You haven't been told there's anything wrong with you, but you're quite convinced that there is. It's a really horrible feeling, and it's something that I've struggled with at times in my life. So I thought I would make a video to share some of those experiences and to talk about how I've managed to get things under control. And health anxiety is definitely a human complexity, but I wouldn't say that it's one of my favourites. But still, it's interesting to think that we're only capable of it because of our ability to think. And other creatures with smaller brains aren't capable of that sort of worry or self-focus. So if health anxiety is connected to our ability to think so much, I can understand why it's been a problem for me as an overthinker. And I've also got another trait that has a connection to health anxiety, and that is hypervigilance, which is basically a heightened awareness of everything that's going on around you and also within you. So both of those traits are connected to the way that my brain works. So maybe anyone who's prone to hypervigilance and overthinking is likely to also be prone to health anxiety. And I think I've always been aware that I seem to be a bit sensitive when it comes to health issues, but I've been able to join up the dots a lot more effectively recently since I've learned more about how my particular type of brain works and why it does some of the things it does, even when they seem mean. So, what's the actual definition of health anxiety? Well, it means excessive worry or fear about having or developing a serious illness. And people with health anxiety often focus intensely on bodily sensations and often interpret normal sensations as signs of illness. And I've definitely experienced that, and it's not nice. But I'm pleased to say that I've got it under control now. And I'm sure everyone has a certain amount of fear about these things, and I think that's where I am now. And maybe even on the lower side of it, because I don't tend to give it much thought at all anymore. But when I hear that description, I can really see why it causes challenges for a sensitive and hypervigilant type of person like me. It almost seems expected that anyone who experiences a heightened awareness of their bodily sensations would be more likely to become fixated with them or paranoid about them. So, as an example, I tend to know exactly how my body feels in any given situation, so I know the instant anything is a little bit off, and it's very annoying. Maybe I feel a little bit off balance, or my temperature feels a tiny bit higher than usual. I think I might be a bit like the princess and the pea and be able to feel a tiny bump in the mattress that wasn't there yesterday. And the same thing applies to my health. I know when something feels different. And this over awareness can be a driving force behind health anxiety. So, like I mentioned, I've always been aware of that, but it was more of an annoyance than anything else, and I just thought that I was a bit of a worrier. And in general, I didn't go to the doctor with any of my worries, I just worried about them to myself. But then a few things happened about 5 years ago that really turned the dial up on all of this, and it started to become something that was having a big impact on my day-to-day life. So, firstly, we were in a pandemic lockdown where almost everyone was afraid of illness. We were told which symptoms to watch out for and how to adapt our lives to try and reduce the risks. It was an invisible enemy doing unknown damage, so it created fear in all sorts of different ways. And then, unrelated to that, my husband had an unexplained cardiac arrest in the middle of the night, despite being fit and healthy before he went to bed. So there was no warning that anything was wrong, but yet his heart suddenly stopped and he had to be saved by the emergency services. And then on top of all that, my hormones started to go wrong, giving me lots of real symptoms, including an extra dose of anxiety. And I think it was the perfect storm, and I found myself with quite a severe case of health anxiety. I was paranoid about getting the illness that we were all hiding from. So I often felt like I was getting a sore throat and a fever, and I took my temperature a lot. And then after what happened to my husband, I became fixated with my heartbeat, especially at night, and I kept thinking that it might stop. And every position I tried to lay in still made me aware of my heartbeat. And if I found a position that I couldn't feel it, then I would start getting worried that it had stopped. I just couldn't win. So, as you can probably imagine, every night was a bit of a struggle, and instead of getting sleepy, I got more and more anxious. I tried to focus my mind on other things, but it was an obsession, and I couldn't see a way out, and I thought I would be obsessed with my heartbeat forever. And then, to make things worse, I started getting lots of strange symptoms that turned out to be the start of menopause. So I didn't know that at the time, and it just added more to my fears that everything about me was going wrong. And I honestly was expecting to die at any moment. And I didn't see the point of planning anything for tomorrow or next week, let alone months or years ahead. And I hadn't even been told that there was anything wrong with me. It was just me coming to my own conclusions and believing those conclusions as if they were a certainty. And that was the trap that I was stuck in at the time. So I think I've described the realities of struggling with health anxiety, for me at least, and it's hard. And it isn't a problem with your actual health, it's a problem with your imagination and how you react to those stories that your brain is creating. And I'm always amazed by the power of the mind and how it's possible to go from calm and relaxed one minute to almost complete panic the next, just by having a few unhelpful and unwanted thoughts. And I didn't realise that at the time. I thought my panic was justified, given the terrible things that were going wrong with my body. So things got bad enough that I had to seek some help. And luckily, my doctor suggested the hormonal link to some of my symptoms. And I did make some definite improvements when I got my hormones back in balance, as well as making some of the strange symptoms go away. And my doctor also reassured me that there didn't appear to be anything serious wrong with me. So I was grateful for that reassurance, but what I went on to learn was that the constant checking of symptoms and looking them up or asking for help from a doctor can actually encourage health anxiety to continue. So once you've been reassured that you don't have any serious conditions, it's better to focus your attention on addressing the psychological side rather than the physical side. And the most impactful thing for that was cognitive behaviour therapy, or CBT, which luckily I was able to access because of a health scheme with my employer. The CBT is a technique that works on identifying and challenging negative thought patterns and behaviours. So it fits perfectly with health anxiety, which is all about getting stuck in negative thought patterns and behaviours. So I learned from that about the importance of calming yourself down when the panic starts to rise. So now I use breathing techniques first to slow everything down. So I do a double gulp in and then I hold that for a few seconds and then I exhale for as long as I can until there's no air left in me. And then I repeat those steps a few more times until I can feel that I'm calming down. And then once I've eased the initial panic, I remind myself that I was okay a few minutes ago, So this is a problem purely within my thoughts, not within my body. And to solve it, I just need to reset my thoughts and to stop checking for signs with my body. And I found that just that simple act of having a plan for what to do when the panic arrives is really empowering. And sometimes now, when I can feel myself trying to worry about my heartbeat at night when I'm trying to go to sleep, I can just say to myself, stop it, you know that never gets you anywhere. And I also like to have some ready prepared thoughts to turn to as a distraction, because that seems helpful when you're trying to stop your mind from returning to the anxious thoughts. I used to play little games and set myself little challenges, like trying to name an animal or a country for every letter of the alphabet, and then maybe doing it backwards. And I sometimes challenge myself to think about my favourite places that I've ever visited and to try and picture myself there. And whatever it is, I think really it just needs to be something to distract your brain from those unhelpful thoughts that are fueling the panic. And it's really just a case of testing out what works best as a distraction for you. And if you're interested in learning a bit more about the CBT techniques, there are some really good resources around. And there's a whole series of books called Overcoming for various different challenges in life. And the one that I read was called Overcoming Health Anxiety. But I have looked at some of the others too. And I found that CBT is useful for lots of different aspects of life. So I've found that what I've learned is helpful in other ways and not just for health anxiety. So now that I understand all of this a bit better, I can also see the link between being a sensitive and hypervigilant type of person, and I've been able to work my way through it logically. And I'm pleased to say that I've never gone back to that bad place that I was in a few years ago. And at the time, I didn't realise that I had those traits of sensitivity and hypervigilance. So having that awareness, as well as the CBT skills that I've learnt, have made me believe that I have truly overcome it. I won't ever stop being sensitive and hypervigilant because that's the way I'm made. But it doesn't have to result in worry that grows into panic, that grows into health anxiety. Because I've learned how to break that chain and I've never gone back there again since. So when I didn't realise what was happening, it all felt like it was outside of my control, that I was just the victim with nothing to be done other than to accept my terrible fate. But being able to recognise what was happening has changed everything. It's become possible to intervene with a more helpful and rational approach. So health anxiety is a problem with the mind, not the body. So when you stop chasing every symptom in the body and instead address what's going on in the mind, there really is a way out. So I hope that by sharing this story, I might be able to help someone else who might be finding themselves stuck in that awful situation and not being able to see a way out. I did find my way out, and while I'm still a bit sensitive, particularly about my heartbeat, it never grows into panic or health anxiety anymore. I recognise it for what it is, and I can much more easily put that fire out before it gets out of control. So if you can relate to this experience or have any tips of your own to share, I would love to know if you would like to leave a comment. So I hope you've taken something useful from this video, but I think that's all for this time. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!